You've heard the argument before. Everything has a cause. The universe is a thing, so the universe has a cause. And whatever caused the universe, we call God. You've probably heard the rebuttal too. If everything needs a cause, then what caused God? And if God gets to be the one exception to the rule, why not just save a step and say the universe is the exception? The standard version of the first cause argument seems to collapse the moment you apply any real pressure to it. But here's what I want to show you today. The popular version of this argument is actually a misunderstanding of a much stranger philosophical idea. The original argument wasn't trying to figure out what sparked the Big Bang at the beginning of time. It was trying to explain why anything exists, right now, in this exact millisecond. To understand it, we have to look closely at the word cause. Because in philosophy, there are two completely different ways a chain of causes can behave. The first is called temporal causation. This is the one we are all familiar with. It moves horizontally, through time. Picture a line of falling dominoes. The first knocks over the second knocks over the third, and so on. But pay attention to a crucial feature of this chain. Once a domino has done its job, it is no longer needed. If the first domino falls, strikes the second, and then vanishes from existence entirely, the rest of the chain keeps falling. You see the same thing in biology. A grandfather brings a father into existence, and the father brings a son into existence. If the grandfather passes away, the father and son don't suddenly cease to exist. In a temporal chain, a cause brings an effect into being, but it doesn't sustain it. The effect has its own independent reality going forward. So if you imagine God as the first cause in a temporal chain, you are picturing a cosmic starter pistol, something that gets the universe rolling billions of years ago and can then step back. But classical philosophers like Thomas Aquinas weren't interested in that chain. They were looking at a second type of causation. It doesn't move horizontally through time. It moves vertically, straight down through the present moment. We call this hierarchical or sustaining causation. Think of a stone being pushed by a stick, which is being held by a hand. This is a causal chain too, but run the same test on it. What happens if you remove the first link? If the hand stops moving, what does the stick do? It stops. Instantly, and the stone stops with it. Notice how fundamentally different this is from the dominoes. In this vertical chain, the later links don't have their own independent power to move. The stick has zero internal capacity to push a stone. It is only moving because it is borrowing its motion from the hand, in real time, continuously. If the hand lets go, the stick's power doesn't slowly fade away. It drops to zero that exact instant. In a hierarchical chain, power is entirely instrumental. Every middle link is just a conduit passing along a reality it doesn't actually own. And this is where the argument suddenly gets teeth. Imagine a series of mirrors reflecting a beam of light. The third mirror is illuminated because it's catching light from the second, which catches it from the first. None of these mirrors generate light. They only borrow it and pass it on. Now imagine that chain of mirrors goes on forever. An infinite number of mirrors, perfectly aligned, stretching into the dark. If every single mirror is only capable of reflecting light, but none of them can generate it, how much light is in the system? Zero. It doesn't matter if you have 10 mirrors or 10 billion mirrors. An infinite chain of borrowers with no ultimate source to borrow from yields nothing. 1,000 zeros added together is still zero. For there to be any light bouncing through those mirrors right now, the chain cannot regress infinitely. It must eventually trace back to a source that isn't a mirror, something that simply is luminous, something that owns its light by its very nature and lends it to everything else. This is the actual first cause argument. It isn't about motion or light. It's about existence itself. Right now, you exist. But you don't exist by your own power. Your existence depends on the cellular structure of your body holding together. Those cells depend on molecular bonds. Those molecules depend on atomic forces, which depend on quantum fields, and so on, moving downward into the fundamental fabric of reality. This is a vertical, hierarchical chain. At this exact millisecond, your reality is being actively sustained by underlying layers of physics. You are borrowing your existence from them. But quantum fields and physical laws don't exist necessarily either. They are just deeper links in the chain, more mirrors, passing along an existence they don't independently own. The argument states that this chain of existential dependence cannot go down forever. If everything in the universe is contingent, meaning it relies on something else to hold it in existence, then the whole system is just an infinite stack of mirrors. For anything to exist right now, the chain must bottom out. It must rest on a foundation that doesn't borrow its existence from anything else, a foundation that doesn't just have existence, but is existence. Philosophers call this pure actuality, or a necessary being, something that cannot not exist. If this argument holds, it radically changes our picture of the first cause. It's not a watchmaker who wound up the universe and left. You can't walk away from a hierarchical chain. If the foundation of reality withdrew its sustaining power for a single Planck length of time, the entire universe would vanish like a turned-off hologram. The first cause is actively holding reality together, right now, as you watch this. Now, let me pause here to keep us intellectually honest. If this argument works, it gets you to a profound, inescapable conclusion, a necessary, uncaused ground of being that sustains all of reality. But notice what this argument does not give you. It doesn't tell you that this foundation is a person. It doesn't say this foundation has a mind or a will, or that it knows you exist, or that it cares what you do. It gives you an ontological anchor point, nothing more. People are quick to call that anchor God. But the distance between a necessary ground of being and the personal God of modern religion is an enormous philosophical gap. To bridge that gap, you need a dozen other, much more difficult arguments. Most of the real debates in the philosophy of religion happen in that empty space. So I will leave you exactly where the argument leaves us. Next time someone brings up the first cause, remember the two arrows. One points horizontally back to a historical spark, but the far more interesting one points vertically downward, right through the floor of the present moment, asking not how the universe began, but why the whole thing isn't vanishing into nothingness right now. I'll see you in the next one.